Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us. Time now for the Kickstarter and youth participation in poverty reduction strategies is the conversation that we are undertaking. We shall also dive into perceptions about poverty alleviation interventions this particular year, but also take time and be very honest in asking the question, is government failing in its poverty alleviation programs? I have a vast array of opinion and perspective, especially by the panelists who will be joining us and helping us with their own perspectives on these issues. But before I do introduce them, a preamble. The Poverty Eradication Action Plan has guided the formulation of government policy since its inception in 1997 and is currently being revised. Under the plan, Uganda is being transformed into a modern economy in which people of all sectors can participate in economic growth interventions, to which the economy requires the kind of structural architecture, including modernization of agriculture, the development of industries which build demand and supply linkages from agriculture, and the continued institutional development, as well as the financial aspects for an economy. The year that is ending, government has come up with a number of strategies, but so many things remain unchanged or not to the trajectory that they are intended to take. Moses Kidega is the Secretary of the National Youth Council. He's joining us this morning for this conversation. Many thanks for making time. And many thanks to you too, Macxzzon Muhwezi, a member of the NRM National Youth League, as well as David Musiri, the head of institutions at the National Unity Platform. Gentlemen, the fact that you are youth leaders within the steed from which you emerge is one that offers all the guns and ammunition to this conversation. But before we delve into how poverty alleviation strategies are rolling out and whether government is actually registering successes or not, the conversation that we've just had about immigration in light of what's happening tomorrow, International Migrants Day, is one that captures the question of youth. When people are forced across borders on account of either natural disasters or occasioned by the vagaries of political struggles, the youth are affected, yet they are a bedrock of labor force for many of these countries. I just want to pick your minds very briefly on this before we can delve into our own poverty eradication strategies in the country. If you don't mind, let me begin with Mr. Macxzzon Muhwezi. You seem to be buried in putting down notes. I do not know whether that will shape not necessarily the conversation, but the youth movement going forward. In light of the conversation that I had with Kao Sarah, the Deputy Chief of Mission for IAM, and Mr. Marcelino Chamtetera Muhwezi, the refugee question and migration aspects are affecting youth. And within your own point of view, how do you see these things getting better, especially in terms of interventions?
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers. I am happy once again to have the opportunity to be hosted on Morning at NTV.
You're most welcome.
First of all, I congratulate Uganda and the entire section of Ugandans upon this Immigration Day. To begin with, I'm very proud to be a Ugandan, and the Uganda's policy on refugees, the open door policy of refugees, really paints a very good picture of what good governance is and good leadership is. If I'm not mistaken, Uganda stands number 2 in the whole world in terms of hosting refugees, the whole world, after Turkey. Now, the refugees, in my opinion, are simply supposed to be productive. As simple as that. There's no politics, there's no mechanics here. What are refugees doing in the country? That is the big question, especially the young people. Look, I have taken interest, and I have seen a number of young refugees going into these small institutions for education.
Yeah.
For what we call self-help projects, to get the necessary skills and tools so that they can participate in the economy, the cash economy of the country. Some are running saloons, some are in small kiosks, some have started the small enterprises. I think that is very, very fantastic. I am very much concerned with the refugees that are necessarily in refugee camps and they are doing nothing. That is something to worry. That is something to worry, and I'm worried as a Ugandan. I want to believe interventions are there, but they are not as corrective as expected, particularly continentally or even at the international level. I don't think Uganda has got enough support as it should be. I don't think the continent has mentioned Uganda enough in terms of support, but also attention and concern. That needs to be worked on. For me, really, I support the case of hosting refugees as long as they are productive.
As long as they are productive. David Musiri, the National Unity Platform speaks a language that often appears to bode well with the youth. I do not know whether the refugee youth are any cluster that you pay very close attention to.
Of course we do pay close attention to them, but again it draws us back to priority. Who do we prioritize in this case?
Okay.
Because as I have heard my brother, we have, I think, two groups of refugees. There are those that are in the camps and there are those that are outside the camps. I want to let you know that some of these that are outside the camps are more prioritized than actually Ugandans themselves. The case of study is in Macxzzon. You know, we have Eritreans. I don't know if you have been around that. If you have been around in the same circles, you'll find that these Eritreans, today they are displacing ordinary Ugandans. I am telling you, it is very hard for you to have a room to rent. These are guys that have a lot of money. Actually, they have a currency. For them, they use dollars and other currencies. So they can come. I am one of the victims, by the way, that my house that I rent, there is an Eritrean and a few refugees, I think, from southern Sudan that wanted to rent it for a year. You can imagine an ordinary Ugandan cannot pay that money, and actually was tripling my rent. Just imagine how easy it is. You see, we are talking about, they are supposed to be secondary to us.
Okay.
But it is not the case. It is only in Uganda that a refugee is well respected. I am telling you, you will not find these refugees in their confinements. These refugees are these people in luxurious places they go have. They can even spend more than us. Actually, I think we need to have a case study about it.
All right. That's
apart from a few...
Perfectly understood.
Yeah.
Perfectly understood. Kidega, as the honcho at the National Youth League, hearing sentiments including the fact that many of these refugee youth actually are more moneyed than the average Ugandan youth and could be pushing many out of the economic and the money economy rather. Does that worry you at all?
Thank you, Chris. Just quickly, my 2 cents on the issue of refugees is that first and foremost, whereas I appreciate Uganda as a country for being a very hospitable country and with its open door policy to refugees, is that Uganda has proven to be very obedient to international humanitarian law that requires that when an individual seeks shelter and seeks food, there is a duty on the state to first and foremost offer that security and shelter, and then later on seek to address the issue that is causing them to move from their country into your host country. But I think to me, Chris, most importantly is that we need to have a discussion about what are the causes of this refugee influx. And if you might notice that the biggest countries that have refugees in Uganda is South Sudan, DRC Congo, and some parts of Ethiopia and Eritrea. And those are regions or countries that are at conflict with themselves. They are volatile. So I think the broader discussion for us to have eventually in the future is that how can we have a stable region? So that, because we should not be pride. We should not pride ourselves as a country as being
the one that can host.
Whereas it's a good thing that we are extending humanitarian support, I think that we should not pride in it, because it's an indication of a much more bigger problem that we have to deal with as a continent. But as to whether these refugees come and have access to better resources like land and things like that, I think that's a question of fact that we have to really get into. But the primary point is that when a refugee comes into Uganda, I think it is they are human beings, and they should be treated as such.
Humanity wins all the time. But let me ask Macxzzon Muhwezi, you spoke about the fact that you like productivity, and now we are morphing into our discussion about youth participation in poverty reduction strategies for the country. The government and the administration of the National Resistance Movement has seemed, if Mr. Musiri's words and Kidega's assertions are anything to go by, that maybe the setting of priorities must also be recalibrated so that citizens begin to feel that they are actually prioritized ahead of anybody else before they can be attended to. Do you see a genuine need for change of that approach?
As I am a very loyal and a disciplined file member of the National Resistance Movement,
you're not bound to...
That means I am in the agreement with the strategic plan and the mission of contributing to Uganda's transformation. Any government, any administration across the world will prioritize its people, because then you're given a mandate, what we call social contract, to deliver, to transform society, make a contribution to society, but also change the lives of the people. I was part of the panel on the 26th of November, launching the State of the Youth Annual Report. It was organized by the Parliamentary Forum on Youth Affairs. It's a section of youth members of parliament. And one of the key components were that 2024-2025, the budget, 30% of the parish development model, money, that is 100 million per parish, 30% of that, 35% of that, will go to young people. It goes to young people, not will, it goes to young people.
It goes to young people.
Yes. 7 billion shillings goes to the Juakari, what we call these small enterprises. And about 150 groups so far have benefited. 32 billion is allocated for YLP programs and PWDs, those sections. There is PPDA guidelines that once a government tender is below 100 million, it should be reserved for young people. Okay. Now, I was very much concerned about the issue of very little money, about 300 billion shillings going to the sports sector and recreation. This is, and so many issues, but this, to me, yes, we are not 100% there, but in my opinion as an individual, the interventions are very clear, the approach is very clear, the research is very clear. The only issue that we need to work on, Chris and the viewers, is execution, implementation of these programs, and making the young people aware of these programs. Because even when you allocate billions of shillings and the young people are still struggling with issues of unemployment and also startups, it becomes a very huge challenge. Yes, the state, the government, the NRM government has done that, this and this, and we are still doing more. But we still have mistakes and gaps on issues of governance, that is proper and efficient, effective allocation of resources, okay? But also making the young people acutely aware of these programs, okay? And also executing them 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you talk about execution, at the end of the day, it still comes back to the administration of the national resistance movement to be able to roll out the mechanism so that the implementation can actually happen. Okay, we are at the bottom of the hour. Time to take a break. When we return, I think we shall be able to dive a little bit deeper into these strategies, but also have a very honest conversation about the design and, like you say, execution of poverty alleviation programs. You're watching Morning at NTV. Do stay with us. We'll be right back to the studio and continue with our conversation on youth participation in poverty eradication strategies and the perceptions around these interventions that many of the youth continue to grapple with. I have with me in the studio the head of institutions at the National Unity Platform, that is David Musiri. I also have with me Macxzzon Muhwezi. He's a member of the National Resistance Movement, the Youth League, as well as Moses Kidega, Secretary General of the National Youth Council. All these gentlemen are youthful and they are positioned to be the leaders of tomorrow. The National Unity Platform has a tendency of attacking the government on interventions that it says are not reaching the people as effectively as they ought to. I do not know whether this comes from a position of knowledge and research. If these particular interventions are not reaching the intended beneficiaries, or when they do, the execution or implementation aspects are not as you would love them to do. Has the National Unity Platform, for example, provided a blueprint on how some of these interventions can be undertaken? Because in opposing government, you should be able to offer alternative tactics and strategies that it can use, not simply criticizing how it's not doing what it ought to do the way you think it's supposed to do. Mr. Musiri.
Thank you so much. First of all, on the same topic, I would want first of all to pay tribute to an icon, Anawiso. You know, he's been a man of valor.
Yeah.
He has advocated for many youths, you know that. And losing such an icon, it leaves most of us with a lot of things to do, most importantly. But back to the back to the question, I think as a National Unity Platform, on very many occasions, ours is about the intention of government. What is the intention of government while bringing over these other policies and a few models that come around, like the parish development model and the like. What is the
Entadikwa, Poverty Action Plan, Bonna Bagaggawale.
Twist, but a few, you know.
You're questioning the motive of those.
The motive. You see, for me, we believe that there is a problem with the grand strategy. The objective, the goal, and the purpose for this is not very clear to the people of Uganda. You know? For example, if you want to help the youth, we all know, and you mentioned it in the Kickstarter, that, for example, the agriculture sector would be very important. For us as the alternative or the option, we think that government would actually invest so much in agriculture. If you, for example, go and visit areas of Masaka, in particular, for example, Koma Simbi, you would see the power of coffee. But after coffee bringing up the youths, now they are buying new motorcycles, they are trying to build around. What is the grand strategy of the government? It is suffocate them, cripple the youth, close wherever they can get money, income. That's the grand strategy. Today, when we come back to the ghetto, we have, you see now, generals, ISO, is actually planting, and there is a grand strategy to organize gangs. If you have been following the news, and I want to appreciate NTV and the management, we had a scenario in Macxzzon East where a young student of senior 3 was murdered in cold blood because of the gangs that are facilitated by government. And I am telling you now, Uganda will be on a time bomb very soon. Instead of giving them, necessitating them on how to live in society, develop business, instead they are pushing a few of them to organize gangs. We are about to resort to what happened in South Africa, whereby you can find, all of us will be victims of circumstances. Chris, you'll find Kidega shot on the road.
God forbid.
God forbid.
God forbid, as they say. You see, but that is the real scenario.
Yeah.
You know, you would find, if back to the question, what is the intention of government?
It's also incumbent upon Morning at NTV to ask you the fundamental question, to substantiate your claims about the fact that government is funding and supporting these, what you call, gangs.
It is self-explanatory. I think if you were following, at one time, I think in Kololo, all the gangs were invited, and there is money for that. Ghetto structures. You do not know about the analogy called ghetto structures. It is happening. You find a few, a cocoon of these so much, maybe stars in the ghetto are given money to organize others into gangs. You see what you have been watching from, for example, the movies. We all know that, for example, USA has over 33,000 gangs in the USA. Now, the intention is very clear. Why are they organizing gangs? For them, they don't mind about developing or eradicating poverty. They mind about how do they sustain themselves. How do we sustain a tyranny? How does he have grip on power? That is what is very important to them. Because if you want to, for example, for all of us, we are from the crop of Makerere University. And all of us, at one point X, we were actually fighting the evil policy called tuition increment. For a government that has a goodwill for its people, would actually come out in such circumstances to subsidize on the tuition of students. What does this government do? It actually creates draconian policies time over time to make sure that the young people are crippled, are squeezed.
Interesting there.
And how, so it is about the intention of government. Does the government want us to, as the youth, to elevate ourselves, to eradicate poverty?
Moses Kidega, the sentiment that is outed there by David Musiri, of course, Morning at NTV is struggling to understand exactly how these gangs are financed and funded directly. I hope in due course, Mr. Musiri will be able to substantiate, even if we are on air, so that when I return sometime, I can be able to correlate the two. Yeah. But he talks about something that is fundamental: purpose, goals, and objectives of interventions. Yeah. And the examples, including the fact that tuition for youth, to help youth access education readily, continues to be an issue, is of course that puts into question the purpose, goal, and objectives of government interventions. You are Secretary General at the National Youth Council. You deal directly with some of these intervention and implementation rollout. Yeah. What is the conversation like? Do you also question the purpose, the goal, and objective of some of these interventions?
All right, interesting. It would be unfair to the viewer if I don't make a small rebuttal to what Musiri has asserted. I think just in a minute is that as a lawyer I would say that there is what we call admissible and inadmissible evidence. I think what Musiri is telling us here is hot air. All right, because if you've tasked him, you gave him a simple task to substantiate what he's saying about the gangs. I don't think there is a government that is out there and prioritizes itself in creating insecurity within the country. I think it is rather a very unfair assertion to make. And really, I don't think it should be given the attention that it deserves. But on the issue of poverty alleviation, poverty, I must say, first and foremost, is a security issue. If you read the national objectives and directive principles of state policy, you appreciate that government has a duty to alleviate poverty. So the question now comes in, what strategies are being employed by government? I am one of those who holds the reserved opinion that our approach has for so long encouraged a complacent population. Because, and on this I will compare two government programs. I will compare the PDM or Emyoga vis-a-vis the 200 billion that government has put in Bank of Uganda and in Post Bank under this the small scale recovery fund. Is that you will observe that out of the 200 billion that government has put in Post Bank, recovery fund, youth have taken up about 40% of this money. But the most interesting fact is that they've been able to repay back this money. Vis-a-vis the money that they take out of PDM, out of Emyoga, that they almost find it a luxury to repay back. Why? Because the conditions under which they get the money through PDM, Emyoga is a bit loose, and therefore the sense of accountability is lost. Is lacking. Yeah. All right, and that is why government will struggle with recovering money that they give youth through the through Emyoga, through the youth. No, actually, the Youth Capital Venture Fund was doing well because it was being run by Centenary Bank. So, to me, the question that government must answer is the mode of availing credit for small, medium enterprises. Because the idea of availing credit through a much more less stringent approach away from the commercial banks that lend money at 24% is a good idea. But then if you're giving this money at almost zero interest rate, but you are not recovering it back, this is taxpayers' money. Taxpayers' money. Right?
It kind of reveals something kind of funny there. I think it's down to it's a question that Macxzzon Muhwezi can help the political question vis-a-vis the real need to attend to the economic challenges of the time. I think the politicization of PDM is to blame for the fact that people don't hold themselves accountable, especially when it comes to returning these funds. Is that a wrong assertion? I know you would agree.
Extremely wrong. Extremely wrong. Just to quickly to tag a comment on what my friend Musiri was saying. You see, these small groups are not the government mobilizing and organizing youth structure. I mean, groups, youth groups. Has not just started. It has been a program of the NRM online of what we call mass line. Everyone must benefit, whether you're NUP or a Catholic or something. You must benefit. Now, I don't see where the government goes wrong in organizing, using government structures, in organizing young people who are, first of all, homeless. Secondly, they have not gone to school because of so many reasons. 3, they are still young. To organize them, give them what we call tools, give them what we call skills, and more so mobilize them around what we call circle to be able to borrow some money, do some business, and return the money. So if that is the gang, then I also want to be part of the gang. But on the issue of politicization of parish development model, gentlemen, I made it very, very clear, and it is black and white, that 35% of every financial year 100 million to the parish, each and every parish, even in Musiri,
goes to the youth,
goes to the young people. I want Musiri here to say that no, our parish has not received that money. And as far as I remember, Parliament the other day tabled the findings of parish development model. About 76%, about 76%, okay, from the oversight, about 76% of the success of parish development model. I don't want to say that there are no challenges, especially on what my brother said when it comes to recovery, execution, implementation.
He has information. Make it a minute.
You get it.
Yeah,
How to close?
Yeah, of course. I wanted to give him information that yes, this money comes to even my parish, but who do they prioritize? Again, that is the question. We go back. It is the cadres. It is just actually the PDM is just like a reward to the cadres. It is happening.
Have you gone there for that money?
Make research, and on their question, actually, on their assertion, they are complaining about, I don't know whether they have been following what Afande Damulira is doing of recent in the ghettos. It is actually, if you want,
are you scared?
The situation is unsynchronized.
Okay.
Chris, you will be able to know that they are organizing. Right. There is criminal syndicate.
Okay,
that
Mr.
Musiri,
I'm going to implore Mr. Musiri.
Just a second.
I think they are.
Macxzzon, just a second. David used the narration of a movie. Yeah. I think let us just take that as a movie.
As a movie.
Yeah.
Okay. You mean what happened in
gentlemen?
The student was not.
You told us that this is a movie.
No,
I understand.
I said the assertion was.
A movie. So
Chris, the assertion was that things that we have been watching in movies actually apparently happening physically.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Moses Kidega, Secretary General at the National Youth Council. Many thanks for the insight, and many thanks to you too, Macxzzon Muhwezi, member of the NRM Youth League, and of course Mr. David Musiri, Head of Institutions at the National Unity Platform. I'll be engaging you further so that Morning and NTV can get a clear picture of exactly how some of these gangs are turning what should be a very good initiative maybe into a totally violent movement. All right, time is up, and we shall do our very last ritual for the day.